Welcome to Hidden History Stories from the Secret City. I'm Keith McDaniel, along with my co host, Ray Smith. Good afternoon, Ray.
Hello, Keith. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. Uh,
Uh,
let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So, Ray, why
let's
don't you
do.
introduce everybody?
Yeah, we've got Alan Lowe with us today, and Alan has so many things that he's involved in. Of course, he's the director of the American Museum of Science and Energy, and it includes the K-25 Atomic History Center, and he's got a new viewing, an interpretive center that's going to be coming online soon. And Alan, we can talk about that a little toward the end if you want to. But what we really wanted you to focus on today is what you're doing with the AMSI cast. And you tell me you've got two, POTUS, and what's the other one?
American POTUS and American FLOTUS, all about the presidents and the first ladies.
All right.
All right.
Yes, that's good. Let's talk about that. How long have you been doing well, I think you were doing the American POTUS longer than the other two, but kind of set it into the history of your involvement in podcasting. Now, before you start, Keith and I were going to do a podcast. Remember, Keith? And we set it up. We said, "Hey, this is how we're going to do it. I'm coming to Keith's house. We're going to do a podcast together." And COVID hit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we said, "Oh, how are we going to do this?" And then I began to use Zoom, and Keith did too. So we said, "Hey, this is a good way to do it. Let's just do a video cast."
There you go.
And how many episodes, Keith? 100?
I think we're close to 100. I think this one may be 130.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
We've been doing it for over 5 years. So
Oh,
we started in April 2020.
yeah, we did.
So we've been doing it we do about two a month.
Yeah.
We try to do about two a month.
Yeah.
And this has worked out well for us because it's opened up opportunities for us to have our guests on that,
Right.
are all over the world. And we've had people from all over the world. So it's worked out well for us.
It has. Very good. Well, let's talk about your experience in that world of the internet and podcast or video cast. Okay.
Well, sure. Of course. Of course. I love to talk about. Great to be back with you all.
Yep.
When COVID hit, and Ray knows this very well, at AMSI, we had to think, how do we continue doing our work with doors closed?
Yeah, we shut K-25 down 2 weeks after it opened.
That's right. Our curator, our director of exhibits, showed up on a Monday, and I closed us on Tuesday. I just hired him, and luckily we were able to keep working and keep doing things like virtual education and so forth. But podcast was one way we thought we can still reach people. And to be honest with you, as the pandemic hit, I may have heard of podcasts, but I was not a listener. I was still very much old style. And my friend then Scott Brunn, who had been with the Travel Network, Travel Channel, and others down in Knoxville, I'd known his wife Annette Brunn, who I went through Leadership Knoxville with a long time ago. I knew Scott, and he said, "Have you thought about doing a podcast about your time with the presidential libraries?" I've been in presidential library world most of my career, starting at Reagan. I've been at Roosevelt and Washington, I've been at Bush and Lincoln. I've been all over the place, and I said, "Well, I guess we could talk about that if you know how to produce one." And he did.
Yeah.
Now, I knew how to get guests, and I knew how to write questions, and I thought I did. I've learned a lot along the way, and we started doing American POTUS. I think that was, I lose track of time and space, but I think that was in 21, early 21, late 20, and started out and just suddenly had a lot of people listening to it. We didn't really do a lot of marketing, to be honest with you. We just threw it out there into the podcast world, and suddenly people started liking it a lot, and publishers started contacting us, and people wanted to be guests. And so now I think we're near probably 120, 130 episodes of American POTUS that we've done so far with authors from every president, authors. I think now we've hit every one, and also other people who've been involved in some way with the presidency. So an old friend of mine, for example, Skip Rutherford, who had worked for President Clinton, Peggy Grande, who had worked with President Reagan, Gene Becker with President George H.W. Bush. We had Ronald Kessler talking about Secret Service. We had a Marine One helicopter pilot on. So usually it's a historian talking about a really good book about a president or the presidency, but sometimes other types of guests as well on American POTUS. So about that time when American POTUS started going well, I said, this is something we definitely can do with American Museum of Science and Energy. And that's when we came up with AMSIcast. And that has been a real labor of love. Again, we haven't quite reached 100 episodes, but we're getting close. Great listeners around the world on a real eclectic set of topics. So we try to keep it a great variety. We do a lot on physics and chemistry and energy, but we also have had episodes on rocks or a great one on beavers. And so we really have a great mix of topics on AMSIcast. With some really terrific authors, scientists, and engineers, and historians. And we don't forget the fact that Oak Ridge was born in the Manhattan Project. So we have some really good Manhattan Project historians and World War II historians. I just interviewed Walter Bornemann about his book on MacArthur and the end of the war. That's been a really interesting way of meeting a lot of people around the world and getting our name spread around the world through that podcast.
So the podcast, American POTUS, is an audio only podcast.
Yeah,
is that correct?
They're all audio only at this point. I figured I had a face fit for audio when I started, and that's what we've done so far.
Ray and I both do as well, but we don't care. So
no, that's remember the old song, "A video killed a radio star," but I stayed with that for now. We've thought about doing some video parts to them. We've done a couple of AMSIcast live. Ray was part of one of those. We did on the book Critical Connections, and we're now thinking about how do we do scatter a few of those through the year where we're doing some AMSIcast lives.
I would encourage you to do that. Obviously I like this format of seeing the person that's talking.
Yes.
But a lot of people just want to listen, and I'm sure even though this is on a video, people that tune into it after they've watched us for a few minutes, they probably don't pay a whole lot more attention to us than just listen to it.
I'm sure they can't take their eyes away, Ray.
No.
Well, I will just add real quick on the last podcast with American POTUS. I had a good friend in Washington, Nancy Smith. She was part of the team that hired me at the National Archives years and years ago, and then we've become good friends. Her husband Danny Smith is a great nuclear engineer. She reached out to me because she's now president of a group called the First Ladies Association for Research and Education, and they're based at American University. They have a lot of great people on their board. She's head of that board, and she said, "We love American POTUS. Could you work with us and make an American FLOTUS?" Mm-hmm. And so we've now, I think, got 4 or 5 episodes of that posted, and about 3 more planned in the coming months. And so we try to record those every 6 weeks or so, and that's growing as we speak.
I think that's a good addition to American POTUS. And again, there's a world of information available there. I'm sure that you can include that people wouldn't normally have access to. So.
Well, I think it's true, and certainly in the presidency, you see a wealth of historians and writings on the office, on the various men who've held that office so far. The first ladies, that scholarship has lagged behind, frankly, and now it's picking up. And Flair, I think Nancy's group is helping encourage that to continue. And that's what we hope to do, is get the word out about what's happened and hopefully spur on further research interest. So if you look at it now, there have been some great new books on people like Edith Wilson, Pat Nixon, Betty Ford, Barbara Bush, and we're trying to get to those authors right now to keep that going. So there's always more to say about the presidents. There's a lot more to say about the first ladies, I think. And I will say also, there's been some nice crossover in a few of these. We had a DMG and Greco on American POTUS and on AMSIcast because his book was about President Truman and the decision to drop the bomb. And so we kind of did a crossover episode there. And some of the authors also will write on topics that are relevant to both. So Kai Bird, remember Kai wrote the book on Oppenheimer and all that, and really, really good book. He also wrote a book on Jimmy Carter. And so I interviewed him on American POTUS about Carter as well.
Yeah, we had him on here talking about the Oppenheimer movie and his book, American Prometheus.
Yes.
It was funny when we had him. I asked him the question. I said, Kai, did Christopher Nolan bring you on the set? He said, yeah, I got to go. I was there. Spent a couple of hours with him on the set. He said, you know what? I said, what? He said, they didn't ask me a single question.
Right. They had their plan of action, right?
Oh, they had their script and they were running with it.
I think I interviewed on AmsiCast Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian and what's that? Project Hail Mary, I think, is being made into a movie now. And he said essentially the same thing. He was on the set. They just kind of did their own thing, but still must be pretty cool to have your book made into a movie.
Well, you know it is, yeah. I'm sure.
So we've tried to do a few on AmsiCast, a few works of fiction as well. So to kind of mix that up a bit and again make it very very eclectic, a nice variety of interviews.
Good.
The lady that has the book coming out in September, Michelle,
Yes,
can't think of her last name.
Shockley, I believe.
Shockley, yes.
Yes,
And you've arranged for her to have a speaking opportunity, I believe,
we did.
and you might want to put her on an AmsiCast.
I definitely want to do that. I've talked to our staff. She's coming in during Nuclear Science Week, which, as you know, we're hosting. We're the national host this year, the week of October 20th. And she is coming in that week. And my hope is to do an AmsiCast live with her.
I think that would be good. We've had her on here. She does, and we had her before she released this book. So when she was on here, she's talking about the book that had the history of some of the concentration camp around. I don't know if that's what you call it, around Tullahoma, and that was the book that she had written then. But now that she's got this one coming out, we'll let you go first, but we'll get her back on here later.
Good. I think the more the merrier. I think
I agree. Yeah, you can't overdo that. No.
That's right. Yeah. So I just want to always be adding value in some way of saying, here's more information. If we help with civic literacy, if we help with scientific literacy, of saying, here's some good information. And I know in these interviews, I have trouble writing questions for them because I want to ask them every question I can think of. Then we'd have a 6-hour interview. So you by nature, you guys know this, you leave out a lot.
Yeah.
But what I hope is that people will say, well, that's interesting. I didn't really think about that before. I want to read that book, or I want to learn more about that topic. So I will sometimes start these by saying, I apologize, but I'm leaving out the whole first part of this person's life that you've talked about. Let's dive into these other things instead. Or I'm obviously simplifying something like this important scientific achievement, but let's burrow down into this part of your book or your research. I should note also on AmsiCast, we've been recently adding sub-series. So one big series we've been doing is on American innovation. Getting ready for the semi-quincentennial, we want to kind of build up to that, looking at 250 years of American innovation. So we have an IMLS grant we had that was helping with that, talking to people around the country about how Americans have always excelled at innovation. And that's recent stuff. We just talked to David Scholl at the UT Oak Ridge Innovation Institute, but also I talked, for example, to the head of the Franklin Institute up in Philadelphia. I talked to the head of the Thomas Edison at Menlo Park complex a couple weeks ago. So I talked to the National Park Service at the George Washington Carver site. So it's been a really fun series to do with them. And part of that also, I should say, we don't usually call them AmsiCast, but they're a series really of AmsiCasts called The STEM of History. We got some great funding from Humanities Tennessee and the National Endowment for the Humanities to talk about the connection of science, engineering, and history, of how they learn from, they inform each other over time. So how they're used in each discipline. So there's always, you can say there are different disciplines, but they do blend, they do connect. And that connection point is where the STEM of history, that's what we talk about with that. So that's been also a fun series to add to it.
Think with me about some of the most interesting exchanges you've had, things you may have learned as you were going. I understand about what questions to ask. You don't always know,
Right.
but there may be some things that have popped out at you as you were going through. What comes to mind?
Sure. Well, I will tell you in terms of being a host, and I'll get to some more interesting, but in terms of being a host, I've learned not only how to craft the number of questions, but how to craft a question. You
Uh,
get to, you don't want to make it too long. You don't want to answer the question that you're trying to ask, that kind of thing. So, but in terms of responses, I think it's been interesting to me with the presidents, in particular, and first ladies, of getting a better feel for the individual, because this person you're talking to has done a lot more research than you've done in,
yeah,
let's say, James K. Polk or Gerald Ford.
right.
And you can read the book, but when you talk to that author, you really get a better sense, I think, of the president and of the time. So I just interviewed, for example, an old friend of mine, Richard Norton Smith, who's a great presidential historian. He just published the finest biography of Gerald Ford. It just came out not long ago called An Ordinary Man. And, talking to Richard, I feel like I walked away knowing Gerald Ford a lot better than I did before. I'm really appreciating Gerald Ford, frankly, a lot more than I did before. Or you talk to someone like Peter Baker. He's a New York Times White House correspondent, been a friend of mine since I was at the Bush Library. He wrote a book on James Baker, kind of the behind the scenes guy. And again, that reading the book and talking to Peter, I felt like though I lived in Washington for many years, I felt like I understood Washington a lot better than I did before. And again, had a great deal of respect for James Baker. Jackie Kennedy, Elizabeth Natali wrote a great book on her about her use of diplomacy. I didn't know a lot about Jackie's trips around the world. She
Yeah.
took a huge number of trips around the world the brief time she was first lady, and including a really kind of momentous one to India and Pakistan with her sister. So sometimes with President Kennedy, sometimes on her own, she's doing these trips and had a real impact. But it's not something you hear or read that much about. You think about Camelot and Jackie Stein might think about her renovation of the White House and creating the White House Historical Association, all important things, but her kind of soft diplomacy, her ability to connect with foreign leaders and foreign publics was a very important part of her first lady time. So I've learned those types of things. Goodness knows, Ray knows in AMSI cast, I came into the AMSI job with some background from my time with Senator Baker at the Baker Center on energy issues and that type of thing. But I was not trained as a scientist or engineer. I was trained as a historian and an archivist. And so AMSI cast has been part of my education. I will read the book. I will talk to these experts, and suddenly I'm learning about asteroids or genetics or whatever the topic is, and that's been I think it's helped me craft the questions that people would want to hear because I can kind of ask from that perspective. Explain this to me. Try to tell me about this complex topic in a simple way so that I can understand it, and we can then build on that for the audience.
And let me say that I believe what you're doing with AMSICast is an excellent addition to the American Museum of Science and Energy. Now, it's a great museum. It is the biggest draw that we have in Oak Ridge, and it does a good job as a museum. But the fact of what you're doing online adds an element to it that allows us to reach a larger, much larger audience. And I just want to say that I'm proud you're doing that, and I encourage you to do it even more as we look to the future.
Great, thank you. That means a lot to me. It does, and I think it helps reach people here, and hopefully those people will hear it and want to come in and see the museum, take part in the programs. But also we're reaching people around the world. To get emails from Germany or Belgium or Japan, that type of thing is really fascinating to me. That international reach as well. Some of that comes from the fact that we have international guests. So I remember Heino Falke. I talked to him in Germany, I believe is where he was based then. He was part of the team who took that first image of a black hole I spoke to on so I'm trying to think, Alan Packwood. That was actually an American POTUS, but that again gets you this international reach. He's the head of the Churchill Archive Center. So I talked to Alan about, let's talk about Churchill and the president. So you get this international reach that, going back, it would have been a lot harder to do 50 years ago, of getting out and reaching people all around the globe.
Yeah, I agree. That's part of the technology that we have access to now that's just emerging. I mean,
Yes.
we're talking about, well, we've been doing it 5 years. That seems like a long time, but yet again, it's not. And things have changed a lot in those 5 years.
Yes,
But
I remember when I went to Washington in 1992. I moved back. I started at Reagan, and I moved to Washington in '92 to the Central Office of Presidential Libraries at the National Archives. And I was there a while, and suddenly they came in and said, "You're getting something called email." And I said, "Why do I need that?
yeah,
I can write a letter or I can call somebody." And
right.
now, of course, if email is down, forget it. Right, right.
Well, the thing now has gone to texting and
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
and social media communications.
Yes.
I still have email, but I don't use it nearly as much as I do
That's true.
texting.
I
And
think that's true, and that who knows what's next. That's the interesting thing. Goodness knows what's on the horizon. And growing up on a farm in Kentucky, I always think back. People will bemoan, all this social media, but how amazing that would have been to have the internet when I was, very far away from the nearest library or a set of encyclopedias, that type of thing. When you're just trying to learn something for a school paper, but now
oh,
being able to contact these people and to contact that information, and for me then to get on here and talk to you all, or I talked to Susan Eisenhower not long ago, Ike's granddaughter, or
yeah,
we all know Clifton Truman Daniel. He was a guest as well, and just being able to reach out and talk to these people, I think is pretty phenomenal. A scientist that what Gino Segre, he was the nephew of was it Emilio Segre, right, who was on the Manhattan Project, or this Gordon Wood, a preeminent American historian. Talk to Gordon.
yeah.
This It really gives you this ability, this connection, this engagement that we just never had before.
You
It's
know,
revolutionary,
it's
really.
it's kind of like they say, all politics is local, but really the reality of it is nothing's local anymore.
Yeah,
It
right.
doesn't have to stay local anymore.
That's right.
You
That's
can
right.
reach around the world
Yeah,
with what you're doing, here in Oak Ridge or wherever you are.
yeah.
So that's the amazing part of the tech. That's the good part of the technology. You
That's right.
know?
There's always a good and a bad, but
Yeah.
that definitely is a good. And for us at AMSI, being able to use AMSIcast, being able to use Zoom to do virtual education,
Mhm.
being able to create amazing educational videos and post them on a website, being able to reach people through Facebook to tell them about what we're doing, all these things, and other social media that I'm still too much of a dinosaur to use, but I know are important to use.
Right.
So all these things, again, rather than Ray's right, we have amazing museums, and we want people to come in and see those, but then to have this whole other suite of things to tell people about what we're doing and to add more to it, it changes our world. It certainly changes the museum world.
For sure.
That's for sure. Yeah. Now we're looking at things like virtual reality and augmented reality, how we get more interactive while not losing. I'm always going to be that you have to have some traditional, some real substance, artifacts, those types of things, but
Yeah.
then connect it to other elements that really can engage people in different ways.
Exactly.
We're fortunate in Oak Ridge that we do have access to some things that other people would give their eye teeth to have access to. And an example that you're aware of, I know, is the Oak Ridge Center for Advanced Technology and Training Center.
Yes.
I said that wrong. It's
Oh,
Oak Ridge
Oak Ridge.
Training and Technology Center, right?
It's the Oak Ridge Enhanced
And
Training
Training
Training.
technology.
Enhanced. There you go.
Enhanced, yeah.
Training.
Forte.
That's the word I couldn't get to. But at any rate, I've been there. I've participated in their augmented reality and their virtual reality. I mean, I didn't know the difference when I walked in the door, but I do understand the difference now because I've experienced it.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you and I have already talked about is they want to be involved in what we're doing at the K-25 with that new interpretive center. I think now is the time. I know this is off our subject, but I think this is the time to engage them as you're beginning to prepare for opening that new facility. And I think they've got some ideas already generated because I've talked to them just a little about what we're doing. And I believe they'll be very helpful to us.
They've been really good to work with. Ashley Stowe's moved down to ORAU, but
Yeah.
Ashley, when he was there, we talked about that and how we modify AMSI exhibits going down the road, as well, learning from what they've done. And Ashley actually was a guest on AMSI Cast at one point talking about Ortic. So we have that really good connection with them that we're going to keep it there for sure. And that's a great one of the many great things about Oak Ridge. We are surrounded by really smart, innovative people. So
Yeah.
how do we make sure we talk about that and also learn from it while we do what we're doing at AMSI?
Yeah.
Yeah, I took a group of my advanced video production students from the high school in Kingston where I teach, and we went on a field trip, and they were impressed to say the least. But here's the thing, and this is kind of off topic, but the thing that they came back, the principal told me afterwards. He came back. He said one of their students. He said that he asked how was the trip. He said it was fantastic. Said, and one of the students said, but the thing about it is they use the same equipment that we do in our classroom. So that's the reason that I took them, to show them that, hey, you're learning skills that, at some point you may be able to do this kind of work right here in Roane County, where I teach.
Yeah. Well, that absolutely, and that's part of what we're talking about at AMSI now is how we team up with great partners, great teachers like you, and help with that next generation get ready for the workforce, whatever that topic is. So nuclear or AI or cybersecurity, whatever that might be.
Absolutely.
I can't help but remember we once went up to interview Senator Howard Baker in his office in Huntsville. And I have to tell this story. It's such a fun one for me. But we set up the huge television camera, okay? Big tripod, huge camera, and set him behind his desk and said, okay, Senator, tell us about your connection to Oak Ridge. He says, first, let me tell you how that place was chosen. And he went into the Senator McKellar story. And when he got through, I said, thank you, Senator, for putting on video the story that I tell everyone who comes to Oak Ridge. But do you know what I would do today? I'd go up there with an iPhone and make that video. In other words, the technology has gone to the point. I mean, when TV's folks from the television station come out now, they don't carry that big camera anymore, Keith. They've got very small equipment that they're carrying.
Oh yeah, I know
that. Yeah,
amazing.
I'll 30 seconds, a little bit more. I'll tell you my favorite Howard Baker story with that. We went up when I was director of the Baker Center, now the Baker School at UT in Knoxville. He'd given me some good good kind of footage before talking about civics and the importance of service. But I wanted a little more. He said, come up to Huntsville, bring your crew, and we'll tape a segment. I'm like, great. So I get up there early one morning. Back then, a pretty big crew of people with the cameras and stuff.
Yeah.
And the senator had a bad cold.
Oh.
And I said, Senator, we can reschedule this. He goes, no, let's do it. I'm here. Let's do it. That's okay. So, before when I talked to him, he talked about the importance of service, of being part of your community, of giving back, of the servant leader, those types of things. So I wanted more of that. And I set him down. We get the mic on him. And I asked the question. I said, Senator, when you ran for the Senate, no Republican had been elected by the people of Tennessee to the U.S. Senate. Why did you run? What was in your mind, your heart when you did that? And he looked at me and he said, well, I don't know. I guess I thought I could win. That was it. And multiple efforts. You all know how this works. Multiple efforts to get something other than that from him were not successful. And so I said, well, Senator, thank you. He didn't feel good. I said,
Oh,
guys,
yeah.
we'll use our old footage. We're good.
One one more Senator Baker story. When we did a tour in Beta 3 at Y12 the first time, this is in 2005, Keith, we arranged for Senator Baker to come, and he agreed to come. We arranged with our security people for him to bring his camera on site, take it all the way into the secure area at Y12, and make his own pictures of the Calutrons. Now, to do that, I had to get a golf cart and set it up, and I had to get permission to let him use a freight elevator to get him up to the second floor. I had all of that arranged. Everything was just set perfect for him to do. I had the director of the guard department was going to physically hand carry that camera for him into the protected area. And what was the man's name that worked for him so long?
Fred Markham?
Yes, he called me that morning and he said, Ray, the senator can't get out of bed. His back has gone out. So he didn't get to come. And he would have made pictures inside Y12, but he didn't get to do it.
His favorite thing was to take pictures. You know this.
Yeah,
He had over a
loved that.
million he took since the age of 12, and said one of the few moments he didn't was during the Watergate hearings, but everywhere else he had that camera.
Mhm.
And I would joke with him how bad I am at taking pictures, but he made up for it. That's for sure. You know, the Baker School, now the Baker School, they have their own really good podcast with
Do they?
Bredesen and Haslam. I think it's called You Might Be Right. They kind of a back and forth of looking at
Yes.
the two different viewpoints. And we did an American POTUS there in their Toyota auditorium. Had Senator Corker and my good friend Jeff Engel, who's a really great presidential historian who talked a lot about the end of the Cold War. Had them on stage talking about kind of the new Cold War and how we're maybe entering into something like that. So that was a fun thing to do, to kind of go back to my old home there and have a nice audience of students and faculty listening to American POTUS.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. Ray, do we want to talk a little bit about the K-25?
Yeah, let's do. Let's give Alan a few minutes to talk about what's happening there and bring us up to speed.
Sure. So the K-25 Atomic History Center, as you know, opened in 2020. As Ray said, we closed it right after we opened it, but it's reopened and doing great. An amazing history center. But right next to it, our friends at the Department of Energy have been working hard on what's now called the Interpretive Center, K-25 Interpretive Center, that will provide additional exhibits about the K-25 gaseous diffusion plant, as well as a great view of the footprint of where the plant used to be. And of course, that footprint is part of the Manhattan Project National Historical Park. So a great view of the footprint. It gives you a really good understanding of the immensity of how large that facility was if you weren't here to see it when it still stood. The exhibits are terrific. The bottom floor of that interpretive center is I'm also very excited about, because it gives me programming space there. So we can have space there for classes, for public programs, for rentals, those types of things in that interpretive center. We also are very fortunate that CROET, the Community Reuse Organization of East Tennessee, is donating to us a renovated Portal 4 on that site. So Portal 4 is where employees would go through to go to work. Got in a little bit bad shape after it was closed down. CROET is renovating it and going to provide it to us for use as a kind of a welcome center. So we'll have a small exhibit, a coffee shop, small museum shop, some meeting space, some room for folks to eat on tables or just to take a break. We hope to do things like rent bikes there and everything, because it's a big site, and we'll have space there for food trucks as well. So that whole area is growing. It's going to be a big part of what we do. When CROET gets through doing some landscaping and lighting and so forth, it's going to look even better. And we're hoping to also have a railroad component to that. We've been talking to Southern Appalachian Railroad Museum and CROET about how we perhaps display some railroad cars and do some interpretation of those too, and their role during the Manhattan Project and otherwise at the K-25 plant. So a lot of things happening there. And like I said, we're also thinking about the future of AMSI, how that moves down the road, how we make it even better. So I think only great things are in our future.
I think you're right, and that coincides with the initiative that the Department of Energy, Chris Wright, the secretary, has talked about the Manhattan Project 2, the second Manhattan Project for providing electricity for artificial intelligence, and he wants Oak Ridge to take a leader role in that.
I think there's no better place in AI and in energy, and certainly nuclear energy with the nuclear renaissance. That's something we talk a lot about. All the workforce development, as we talked about as well, we're front and center in that. So when we get all these right now, I think we're a good resource. We're going to be even better. I think that interpretive center, we haven't set the date officially yet, but I think it'll be later this year, sometime probably August, September, that gets dedicated. So we're excited about that coming online. Gives us even more resources to do what we do.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. Well,
anything else, Alan, you want to share with us about any of the things that you're involved in? If not, we'll put a wrap on this.
Well, I will just say that if people want to hear these podcasts,
how do they get to it?
For AMSI, you can always go to amse.org, and there are links there to the AMSI cast. We're very fortunate that WUOT 91.9, our local NPR station, airs every Saturday the AMSI Science Report. And that's a 4-minute report we do. Mm-hmm. And I use a little snippet typically of an AMSI cast and talk about that topic. It's very challenging for me to write a 4-minute segment. I like to talk and I like to write.
Right.
But that's been very popular, and that helps us. That's another way to use AMSI cast and to reach a broader public. So you can go to amse.org. You can also go to amsicast.libsyn.com, and that's amsicast.libsyn.com. That has all the AMSI casts on there as well as the science reports and the stems of history. For American POTUS and American FLOTUS, you can just go to americanpotus.org. FLAIR also has the American FLOTUS on their website, and that website is flare-net.org. So FLARE-net.org. But that's where you can find those, and certainly I hope people listen and enjoy them.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you so much, Alan.
Thank you all. I appreciate it. Always good to see you.
All right.
You too. Thanks for spending the time with us. And again, I applaud all that you're doing. I think the museum is growing and in ways that a few years ago we couldn't even think of. But now we are doing it and doing it well.
Thank you, sir.
All right, folks. Thanks for watching. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with another Hidden History.